your life. You got this. Go chase it, live your life. Enlighten you. Let the light shine through. Light. Enlighten you. Just see it through.
I'm Melissa Thrasher.
And I'm Lolita Cummings.
Welcome to Enlighten U, EMU's award-winning mental health podcast for students. We are glad you're back with us for another episode. Today's show dives into a topic that's deeply personal for many students, but it's often misunderstood. For students who are mixed race, identity and belonging can be lonely and painful. It's a path that can be layered, shifting, and shaped by how others see you and how you see yourself. On campus, that can mean navigating assumptions, code switching, not enoughness, or just feeling caught between communities that don't always fully reflect your experience.
That's right, Melissa. So on today's show, we're unpacking what it means to grow, thrive, and build community at those intersections. And to help us do that, we're welcoming Jordan Boyd, a mixed-race EMU senior with an African-American dad and a white mom. Jordan is very much involved in the EMU community as the Black Media Association president and our collective vice president, so he has firsthand knowledge to share about the complexity of belonging, the impact on his mental health and self-esteem, and the strength and richness that come from holding multiple identities at once. We're also welcoming our resident mental health expert, Dr. Aisha Mustafa, a licensed clinical therapist and an assistant professor in EMU's Department of Leadership and Counseling. So whether you identify as mixed race or just want to better understand and support the people around you, this conversation is for you. Let's get into it. Jordan and Aisha, welcome to Enlighten U.
So Jordan and Aisha, welcome to the show. We are so interested in diving more deep into this subject and learning a little bit about you and its impact. But let's start way back. We're going to go back to your childhood years. Talk about how mixed identity impacted you growing up. And were there any special defining moments that help you realize that you were a little bit different?
As far as like defining moments, I would say like the standard kind of you're not white, you're not black is definitely one of like the bigger ones that I feel like a lot of mixed people automatically go to. And just kind of like, that's really where I feel like my journey starts with those, like the jokes. And obviously like a lot of like the microaggressions are like fall under like the jokes or like the not really knowing like how what you say plays an effect on somebody's development. And I'd rather say that I was rather more like friendly, like the school I went to, like we were all like close. But, you know, you can still be a friend and still kind of take offense to a joke and not mean it in a sense. So I would say like, when people be like, you're not black, but it's kind of like when I'm young, I don't know what that means. Everybody else here is black. So I don't see a difference, you know? And then you kind of, as you get older, you're like, okay, but what do they actually mean by that statement?
So would you say, Jordan, that you were taught at an early age that you had mixed heritage, that you were both black and white before you started school? Or what was there a defining moment at school where you thought, oh, I'm a little bit different than my classmates?
My direct answer is more on the side of, wasn't necessarily the conversation. It was more of just like, just going through and it just developed over time. Like the realization, it wasn't a moment where my family sat me down and was like, hey, we're two different races and you're a product of both. Mm-hmm. It was more of a just kind of like, as life progresses, you'll experience it. Yes. And you'll develop who you are and how you feel over time. I did go back and forth between saying that I was mixed and just saying I was black, because it's a back and forth till you kind of solidify on an answer. And it still kind of goes back and forth in conversation.
Oh, wow. That was my next question. Do you identify more with one culture than the other? But it sounds like you go back and forth?
Yes. Okay. So I would say that like just if you just basically ask me to plain identify, just a quick question on a quiz or however, I'm just going to automatically just put down African American. Mm-hmm. But if I'm like having a conversation that requires like a in-depth or more detailed description, I would go into the mixed side of it. But overall, just a natural answer. I resonate more with like claiming just African American, because that's more of the natural community that I grew up in, and as well as like that's what a social predominantly answer is, if that makes sense, like the like one drop rule, or just like if you're black, you know, that's the more dominant distinction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. But I can sense that you're proud of both, you know. You're proud of who you are, so that's good. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question about terms. Do you prefer, first of all, welcome to the show. Do you prefer mixed race or biracial, or does it matter? Do you just kind of use them interchangeably?
I would say it's interchangeably. I would lean more towards biracial. Just sounds cooler.
It sounds natural too. Yeah, yep.
So you had a black dad, you had a white mom, and you said you sometimes identify as mixed race or biracial or black. Do you ever identify as white, or is that just...
No, so I don't feel like there's a moment where I really identified as white, unless like when I was young, I was kind of like, okay, this is, you know, but as far as like when I really understood the details of both sides, I don't feel like I've claimed being white over being mixed or black. I feel like that one was really an option of one that I chose.
So what age do you think you were when you realized that you were just a little bit different than, you know, your white friends or your black friends? And at that point, did it matter? Did it shift you to one friend group or another, or it was just, you know, we're cool, we're just all hanging out?
I would say leaving middle school, entering high school, probably the bigger stage of like really defining that. And I would say because there was me and one of my friends. She was really, really fair skinned, but she wasn't mixed. So it was always the battle of who's the whiter person kind of thing. So I feel like that was like that era, like that ninth grade year is really when it was like finding that identity and like really like standing in the lane, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Aisha, what do you think?
Yeah, there's so much great things Jordan said that to point out. And so one of the things you said is like, it wasn't an option. And so often with folks who identify as biracial or mixed or multicultural is people are putting them in a box so that this is in between. Another thing you pointed out was like the terms you use. And so I think there's an article called like multicultural or biracial bills of rights, in that you don't have to identify the same way as your siblings. And so like, what does this look like? Because some people are like, well, my sibling says this, but I don't do that. You don't have to identify the way your parents are saying you are, because sometimes parents will be like, no, don't forget your XYZ, especially if you may not look physically like them. And so how do you find the place you're in? Because sometimes the jokes can be playful, but it's like, well, you don't have this kind of parent, so you don't really know how to cook that thing, you know? And I think also that in our culture in the US often that mothers and women are the ones who bestow the cultural traditions and pass them down. It's like, well, you didn't have a granny that taught you how to make tamales. And so you don't really know. You make that other cultures, like, you know, the basic tacos. And so how to make sure that, do you reaffirm, like, even if you don't know these certain things, like that doesn't make you less than. And I think it also depends, like you said, you grew up the Black culture, where you live, that also has an impact. So sometimes our college students will come here and maybe it's a cultural difference, or maybe they're looking to have that experience where lots of folks will, they have more access to folks that is where they grew up or where they're wanting to go, and people that look like them, and that navigation of like, are people like, do you really belong here? You don't look like what we think you're supposed to look like. Particularly for folks who may be fair skinned, where this otherness of like, are you here? Are you in the right group right now? Like, what does that mean?
Because colorism is a big deal.
Yes.
Right. And so when you were growing up, did you feel like you were welcome in all the spaces? I know you mentioned a little while ago something about microaggressions and little jokes that people would say. I'm assuming they didn't mean for them to be harmful, but they stung a little bit. Did you find that you had to move from one group to another because of those things, or were you able to kind of navigate it, shake it off, or just know that most times it wasn't intentional?
I want to say, especially the high school setting, is that we were all kind of like had everything else going on. Like everybody else had something else to worry about in that sense. So like race wasn't the biggest issue, because I come from Detroit, Brightmoor specifically. And in that area, you have like the community that you have in that sense. So like race, obviously it's a center of a joke, but relatively, I don't feel like I was pushed out or pushed away being mixed. And I feel like, especially like the Hispanic, Latino community, they were heavily involved too, so they weren't pushed away for being not either or in that sense, mixed or black. So they were also somewhat included. So it's kind of that like a bond or togetherness between
I love
both
that.
groups.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, your community. I like that too. This topic is so complex. I mean, we talked about colorism, and I was listening to the Karen Hunter show. I'm a big fan of Karen Hunter. I think I mentioned this to you before, but she covers a lot of different topics. But she covered this person on TikTok, this guy on TikTok, and he talked about how he looks, you know, and how he's mixed, but no one really believes what he's saying because he doesn't appear to look that way. And he has probably over 1 million followers just following his journey. So, of course, this topic is something that a lot of people talk about, but let's talk about some of the assumptions that you've probably dealt with, you know, with the way that you look. Have you dealt with anyone commenting on the way you look?
Yeah, I would definitely say as far as like commenting goes, definitely that comes down to once again those jokes and like more about like the assumptions. Parents asking how to deal with their kids' hair is definitely another one that kind of plays into that. Like, hey, I don't know too much about this hairstyle because it's in between. And then other assumptions like being a representative, I believe is what it was called, like knowing about both cultures and be able to just elaborate. They're assuming that I'm like a mediator or a representative of both communities.
Right. You're so expected to
You're
know.
an expert
Yeah.
on
Right.
and everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's ask. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. So how do you navigate those assumptions or comments when someone says, "Hey, well, tell me a little bit about your hair and why does it look like that and not like this?" I mean, you know, how do you navigate?
Well, I would say that's more of an environmental like situation depending on the question, because like some people can mean it in a disrespectful way, and some people can mean it in a genuinely I don't know way kind of thing. Or some people just like, hey, I'm just interested how you do it versus I do it. So I guess it kind of meets with each scenario, but relatively overall, it's just kind of like I don't mind sharing if I have the time, elaborating on it. You know, and explain how I do it is different than how another person who would be mixed would do it as well, because there's different styles that everybody follows. So it's like being on the hair side of it is like my hair texture is the 3C, 4C area.
I'm impressed that you know that. Wow. I don't even know that, but go ahead.
Oh, but I mean, that kind of comes down to that one of those things where it's like if I don't know what my type of hair is, a lot of people will automatically know. Like if I go into like a stylist, they have to either be like, okay, I don't know what type of hair you have, or like I'm gonna figure out somebody who can do white people hair. And I'm like, but the thing is like, if I walked into a hairstylist, a white person would not know at all what type of hair, relatively like an unexposed stylist.
You know, Lolita gave me a little bit about your story. Do you think those assumptions or comments that you hear are more about your hair texture?
I would say that's a big goat too, because that's one of like a really distinctive feature.
Yeah.
And I feel like that falls in the category of like distinctive features like hair, skin complexion, the way like we naturally act or sound or talk. Like I feel like those are like the big four
Music that you
music
like?
that we listen
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
It's like, you don't know that person? Oh, that's because you have an XYZ parent.
Exactly.
You're like, okay.
Yeah.
Or you're expected to know both I mean, you know,
Exactly.
all genres maybe.
Absolutely. I would definitely say like, and I will say I am a very flexible person when it comes to music, but I'm not listening to like heavy metal off like natural, you know what I'm saying? The heavy metal is not a go-to. But I do love J. Cole. That's probably not somebody laughed at the fact that I said that, I know it. But Hamilton, I love Hamilton. I love the musical, you know, and it's like the polar opposites of like hip hop. You know, Lil Wayne was one of like my favorite artists growing up, but I still love Hamilton and like that mixed.
You can have me
That
turn
mixed
Hamilton
bag.
on when I get back in my car to sound check this movie.
I know.
And Nonstop was one of my most played on the Apple recap.
Yes.
You know, so
Yes.
that musical does. I mean, that musical is really good song.
It's
Musical.
amazing.
Yeah.
So Aisha, what other challenges do a lot of biracial or mixed race students face? You know, one of the things is people are naturally curious, and so we ask a lot of questions. Sometimes we don't ask the questions in the most respectful ways. How can we how can we educate people on how to do that better? How do you prefer? Like you said, sometimes it depends on your mood. What's one way that is always okay if I'm curious, for example, about your hair, to say something? Is there language that I can use, or language that I shouldn't use? Obviously, I shouldn't come up and say, "Let me feel it," right?
Yes. I mean, off the top, I would definitely say that my statement probably be different than what somebody else would feel about it. I'm more of a naturally conversadable person, depending on the day. But overall, I just feel like it's about giving off how you say it. Once again, obviously, like, hey, can I feel your hair is different than, hey, let me touch your hair. You know what I'm saying? Like, but like, can you help me, like, can you elaborate, or like, I generally don't know. Like, I feel like if you say I generally don't know, you shouldn't get mad at somebody.
Right.
And obviously there's a little room, but I feel like if you say I generally don't know, you could probably ask the most ridiculous question. Obviously, there's a little back and forth with that, but I just feel like if you're willing to admit you generally don't know and you're willing to try to understand, I feel like nobody should be mad. And that's kind of like how that's my feeling about that answer.
What do you think, Aisha?
I think it depends, like, why are you asking? Like, is it something you need to know? You know? And I think there's, like, if you're asking, like, like, you're in a museum, like, how do you do that? Like, is it very different than, like, oh, I know your hair may not be like this, but it's not like that. But, like, do you need to add moisturizer? Because, like, with my hair, moisture is the name of the game. And how does that work for you? Or, like, for my hair, being afro textured and the tightness of the coil, I wash once a week. My daughter, whose father is white, we can't do once a week. And so even with myself, of like, I was talking to my hairdresser the other day of like, how do I do her hair? Because I know to do mine, I expect it to be like mine, but hers is soft. And, you know, if you're trying to braid it, it slips. Or of mine, it can just hold it. It defies gravity, you know, and it's glorious in a crown. And so how do I help her embrace that? And so I think there's like just knowing why they're asking the question. I also think I'm a person, if someone's asking and they say like, well, I hope this doesn't sound racist, that may not be a question you should be asking. Yeah, that's a bad thing.
That's a bad way to
of
open
like,
it.
oh, you know, when's your color gonna come in or something like that is like but why do you need to know that? And so I think also looking at your own identities when you ask someone a question, because I can't speak for you, but it may be a difference if I'm asking the question than someone who's not a part of your racial background. Or if it's like, hey, you know, my kiddo is also mixed biracial, and, you know, I've asked people in my community of like, what are things that I should be knowing? Because I want to make sure like we're raising her as like, yes, dad's white, mom's black, you're black. However, yes, there's mixed heritage. She's 19 months old. Her current thing is anytime she's a black woman, she's like, mama, that's Oprah, bam. That's Oprah. And like, how do you talk about race and how do you do those things? Because she's already racialized and just like, so if I'm asking someone who has mixed heritage, like, how do you navigate those sort of things? Because it's just going to be a continual thing as she grows up. And growing up for me in the 90s, I don't think with forms you could check more than one race. And so my friends are like, it's a big thing of like, which one do you check? Or even often people were like, oh, she's mixed. And people assume that means black parent, white parent, and typically white mom, black dad. But instead saying like they're mixed and these are the heritage they have. And so, you know, also friends who are biracial, white and Latina, and pass as white. And so how do you have that conversation with folks where you're like, no, actually, you know, I'm Latino, and people are like, oh, okay. You know, it's like, no, that's not appropriate to say. And just knowing that there's a spectrum of experiences.
Do you think your parents, thank you, you think your parents made an effort to keep you in touch with both sides of your heritage? Or was it just kind of natural? You fit in with the friend group and you learned black, you know, things that black children were doing in school and white children were doing. So wasn't that an issue? What do you think?
Personally, I feel like there was no forced culture. And I would say that especially because my parents grew up in like opposite communities. And for them to kind of come together was kind of like one of those things when you look at it as like, how did you guys meet in general kind of thing? So when you ask like that culture difference, like looking at both cultures and saying, hey, which one did I pick? Or like how easy was it for me to pick from each one? I feel like it was just one of those things where day by day, one day I did more of this, one day I did more of that. That kind of played that role. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it wasn't, hey, today this is the curriculum of being black, this is the curriculum of being white. You know, it was just free flowing.
Organic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it wasn't forced for you. Yeah, more organic. Yeah. Let's talk about mental health. And of course, I want to follow up with you on how, the impact of mental health. But in terms of your mental health, has this mixed heritage had an impact on your mental health?
Yeah, it's definitely had a moment, in a sense. I would say maybe some days I do look at it like, dang, maybe it's because I'm mixed, but at the same time, I feel like it's not the more pressing side, like with race playing onto like the mental factors that I would say that I other issues, you know what I'm saying? So I feel like more stressed about like school or other things than saying, hey, dang, I'm dealing with being mixed at the moment. Now I feel like that's a subject to change, maybe if I get more into a work environment and I'm dealing with the stereotypical microaggressions and stuff like that, I might be able to lean more onto that being the issue. But right now in my current moment, I'm not heavily going through a mental phase due to being mixed.
Okay.
As immediate, I could say it could be a secondary thing that also I could be connecting to, but like as far as like direct answer, no.
That's your truth. That's good. Okay.
So you felt like you've always belonged in the communities and welcomed in the communities where you were.
Yes.
That's good.
I would say yes. I know a conversation we were having about like roles on e-boards and stuff like that, like
Because you were on
the Black Media Association president. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I've served on several different e-boards. Like in high school, I ran for class vice president. So it's like in the community, it's like it's not hard to like connect for me. Like when I'm like back in the city, I dropped out, so I don't know if I would have won. I can't say I would have. I felt like I would have. But no, I just got tasked with a different one, and we wound up doing this program to help out people in the community, and that was a little bit more something I wanted to do. So it was a different path. But as far as Eastern, I've been a part of several different clubs. Like me and my friend, we started the MMA club back up here. We was on the judo team, and that's heavily Asian and white dominated for both of those arts, especially like at Eastern. And I was the president and for the MMA club and vice president for the judo club, the Black Media Association, the Art Collective. It's not a race-focused group. It's heavily minority-based at the moment, but it's just about inspiring people to pursue their art in whatever form that means to them. Black Media Association, developing minority skills in media and making being able to build that relation and helping assist people. Once again, none of them are directly focused solely on one race, but obviously they have their niche in there. But I've been able to fill roles, multiple roles, where I don't feel like race has stopped me or like boosted me in a sense. But I will say, like, do I feel like they're crucial for me for like a part of my experience to be saying, hey, I can do this and this. It's not, I can't do this. I feel like it is crucial in that aspect. I have that on my resume, that I'm in multiple things, that I'm able to be in this flex role, and it's not a race issue that's preventing me.
Yeah, it's just you.
Yes.
You can do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Aisha, what are the
Impressive.
challenges do they face?
Yeah. So anxiety, depression could be one of like, okay, I want to go to this group. Am I going to fit in? So maybe you're Black, biracial with white, and mama's white, and you want to join a Black women's group. And you may not have the stories to share of your Black mom taking you to the salon all Saturday and the smells, you're smiling because you know it. Like, that's the experience. And so, like, well, what do you bring up? Or what if someone's like, well, what'd you do? Even if your hair is similar texture. Sometimes, like, maybe you don't look mixed or biracial, but you don't have the experiences that help you feel connected. For other folks, it could be if only one parent was involved in the raising of them, and if it's the parent that may not look physically like them, the anxiety of like, I don't have that connection, or people are going to just think that I'm using my mixed race identity as some way to capitalize, because one day I say mixed and one day I say Black, and people may assume like you're using this for gain and not to assume that, because there's just in between. And the depression of like, will I belong? Like, if I go to this group, can I make friends? Can I run for president? Or someone's gonna be like, well, we really should have someone who's monoracial. And like speaking for myself, the Black community, like lots of African Americans are not just Black. Like I have white ancestors due to slavery. At my family outing, there's a spectrum of colors, including folks who do have white parents. And we joke about which filter are we going to use because there's so many different colors. And so for myself, like not being mixed race, I do have a mixed upbringing where I feel like this in between of things. And so, like, what does that look like? And I think also depending where you grew up, you spoke about growing up in Detroit, we're a predominantly Black city. And then if someone has parents that are fantastic with raising them with a biracial or Black identity or whatever race, but they grew up in a rural area or more predominantly white or something like that, it can be hard of like, I don't know these things I'm supposed to know. And so that can be like a little touchy of, you know, we often hire ed or like join the club, join this, blah, 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 and get connected. And it's like, oh, but I don't have foods to bring to the cultural celebration, or my family didn't celebrate that holiday. Also for folks who may not identify as, well, they're not mixed race, but they're transracial adoption or US-based adoption, but they don't share the race of their parents. There's still like this in between. Or for folks that say Black, but parents are both from Jamaica. And people were like, you're Black. Like, well, no, actually they're from Jamaica. And then they're like, but are you really? And it's just like that, you know, it's a very complicated thing. And so some people will maybe like, well, you're just trying to say you're Jamaican American to like seem cool. And it's like, this is my culture actually. And so how to, you know, do you choose that moment to like, we're going to learn something today, or just like, okay.
Melissa knows a little bit about that.
I know. That's why I love this subject. So my background, of course, is Jamaican and American. So my mom is Jamaican, and I definitely identify. I don't want to say identify. I want to use the word understand. I'm very connected to the Jamaican culture. I've embraced it over the years. I love visiting. I mean, I call it my home. I have sister locks now, you know, so I've definitely embraced the journey. And like you were saying, my family is so multicultural, and I'm so proud of my family. So I take every opportunity, you know, to talk about who I am, what I stand for. And it's easy for me to embrace other cultures, you know, because that's just who I am. And I feel that from you too, you know, that your spot in society. So good for you. I do want to ask the question for students who may feel, mixed students who may feel that they're not enough. What advice would you give to them to cope with those external pressures?
I feel like it's a evolving niche, right? There's a lot of different programs that Eastern offers, including like counseling, right? I would say counseling is a good place to start. But I feel like personally the best aid that one can get is like a peer to peer.
Yeah, support.
Thank you. Support. And because it's one of those things where it's like, if you're going through it, it's easier to talk to somebody who is going through it, or somebody in a similar issue. You know, it doesn't have to be directly related, because you can take a walk and talk about something with your buddies for 2 hours, and by the time y'all done walking, y'all ready for food, you know? So it's like a lot of times it's that support system that you need, but you got to understand yourself, and understand yourself is probably the biggest part. If you feel that race is playing a big factor in your life, understanding like reading more into what race is and why it's playing a big factor in your life and why do you feel that way. And I feel like how I was discussing a little earlier about how like I feel like I don't have a lot of the bigger issues about like the race, about me being mixed and stuff like that. I feel like, is that me saying that, or is that me ignoring it and choosing to not embrace the issues? As we were discussing earlier, it's kind of a thought that came to my mind, and I'm thinking about that now, like how if I did have more of a heavier feeling about that, how would I feel and how I would go about doing that? And I'm not saying that I don't have any type of feeling about it, but as I was saying, like I'm one of those people who's flexed in the role of what I needed to do. But as far as like solutions, peer-to-peer mentoring, seeking counseling, mentorship is always a good place to be. And especially like you can mentor and be a mentee at the same time. And what I learned, I can help somebody else, even if I'm not meaning to help them, just by me talking about it, I was allowing somebody to be like, maybe I should look into this, and then I would also say like, if I had to choose between a mentor, am I automatically going to go to one type of person, like a black person or a white person? Like, who am I naturally going to more feel with? Understanding like what is that system that I'm looking for. Like I said, so my direct answer is learning more about what you need first, then looking for help.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah, I just like.
I mean, I was going to
We're
ask you.
going
Right.
Do you have
That's
any?
it. Yeah, no, I think we're going to wrap it up almost there.
Yeah.
But Aisha, I'm going to ask you for our traditional resources. But that was amazing, Jordan.
So I
Thank
agree
you.
with the counseling. So our CAPS, our behavioral health community clinic, and the counseling clinic. The other person I want to plug is Raina LeGrand. So she was on our episode, season 1, episode 10.
I don't know how you remember all that.
I did look it up.
Okay, all right. I don't know how you remember that.
And her whole thing is about mixed race belonging. So she's mixed race, and she makes sure to tell people of here are the 5 things that make that up. And her whole platform is helping mixed race people. So her website is Roots to Rise.
We'll put it on the
Yes.
screen.
And then her Instagram, which I love, is Mixed Race Belonging. And so she's an IPSY, and she has groups and meetups at picnics and stuff of just to talk about this experience, because it's just this in between, and people don't understand if they're not in it. And so I think also the thing I want to mention is knowing you already belong, just being an EMU, that we're all finding belonging. So like I said, I'm Black and African American. I would feel anxiety going to an African student union if I want to connect to my heritage, because I don't know which country, because of transatlantic slave trade. So knowing that while the experiences are unique of folks who are mixed race, we all are trying to find that belonging and how to feel authentic. And so not seeing yourself as so much of no one here gets what I'm going through.
Yeah,
So.
I feel like that word belonging is very important, because like if you don't feel like you belong somewhere, you're not going to be happy being there. And I feel like, especially like with the orgs that I've joined or like the communities that I've been in, like from being in like NSBE or IEEE, right? Those are ones that focus on different things, and they're made up of different groups. Obviously you can interchange what they are, like NSBE, the National Society for Black Engineers, and IEEE, don't quote me. But just like understanding more about like where you fit in, and then, excuse me, then I'm also in a predominantly Black fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi. Shout out to the good noobs, yo.
We're going to let you do that.
But, and then like with that belonging, right, it's that there's a lot of different people in there. Obviously, it's predominantly Black, but we have members of all nationalities and race in there. We have different chapters across the world. And it's something where it's like, although it's not directly Black, you still can fit in, So like, I feel like that belonging is like a good word to use, like where do I belong, and understanding more about that.
I love that. We're going to end there.
too.
And you
Wow.
have made your place you have, in major way, and it's serving you well. So
Yeah.
nice
Thank you,
work.
thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jordan.
Thank you
Appreciate
for
it.
having
Thank
me.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Great conversation.
I'm so glad we did that show, because so many people don't know how to ask questions to mixed race identity students. They're curious, and it's okay to be curious, but Jordan gave us some guidance on how to ask those questions, and I really like that.
Yeah, this was a really good show, and I'm glad that he offered so much clarity, especially when it comes to appearance, because some people just don't know. They don't know what to say. So he gave a lot of clarity for everyone.
He did. That's helpful.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for watching this month's show. Just remember that mixed race identity is complex, it's personal, and it is profoundly shaped by the interactions we all have. Today's conversation reminded us that belonging isn't about fitting neatly into one box. It's about honoring the fullness of who we all are and creating spaces where others can do the same.
Well, this wraps up another show for us. We hope this episode helps you to reflect, connect, and show up for yourself and show up for one another with more compassion and understanding. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening to Enlighten U. And please, Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share it with others. So until next time, take care of yourself and take care of one another. Y'all be good.